Hello, everyone. Welcome today to the WP Crowd. This is episode 2 of our fantastic series, Teaching WordPress. Today we have a fantastic panel of educators that cross across the WordPress teaching areas. So let's say hello to Tanya. Hi, Tanya.
Hi, Megan. Hi, everybody. I'm Tanya Mork. Some of you may know me as Hello from Tanya. I'm the voice and the teacher behind Know the Code. You'll see me at WordCamps now and then, too. I'm an electrical engineer and a software engineer by profession. I started back in the mid-1980s. Yep, I've been around for 30 years. I used to do a lot of robotics and worked in high-tech manufacturing for all the big manufacturers around the world. Got sick, got better, joined into the WordPress community, and now I share my 30 years of experience by educating and trying to help WordPress developers to be able to do more in this profession.
Wonderful. And we have Joe Casabonnet here today. Hi, Joe. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm reporting from a new office, actually. Yeah, my name is Joe Casabona. I'm the guy behind WPinOneMonth.com and How I Built It, my podcast about people and how they build things. So I am a teacher and a software engineer. I taught for in-person classes at the University of Scranton, and now I do online courses through WP in 1 month for site implementers, people who want to build stuff with WordPress, as well as start to learn maybe a little bit of web development.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. We also have behind the curtain, it's Roy Savan. Hi, Roy.
Hi, I'm Roy. I'm a senior software engineer. I also teach on lynda.com and Caldera Learn. And I really suck at this podcast thing, apparently.
You're not supposed to admit it, Roy. No one would have known had you said nothing. Oh, my.
But well, yes, usually I host the show, but today, handing it over to Megan.
And for anyone who doesn't know, I'm Megan Haynes. I wear many hats here in the WordPress ecosystem. Today, I am speaking more in the role of how we teach WordPress online, how we communicate some of those code principles through, and what the differences are between teaching online and teaching in real life. So let's start this discussion just with that sort of topic. Teaching online is certainly different from teaching in face-to-face, where we have a little bit more extra information. Tanya, do you have some ideas and some opinions about that topic?
Oh, sure. There is a big difference between online and in person. So before I came to WordPress, I taught a lot in person. I'd be hired by companies to come in and help not only with their engineering team, but their entire culture, and be able to fine-tune not only their processes, but their people and so on. That's a much easier approach, because now I'm standing there face-to-face with you. I can take you on a journey from where you're at today to be able to understand within the environment of where you're at, right? So I can see your culture. I can see how you're responding. I can ask you questions to guide you on a journey to get you to where I need you to go, and then help you to discover. But when you're online, you're pre-recording, right? So, and then you're producing and you're publishing this out before you had the chance to be able to interact with students. And that's different. So what you have to do then is anticipate, all right, what are they going to ask me? What problems might they encounter? What are their pain points, and so on? And you build that in. So you stop. And the way that I did Know the Code is I made it like you and I are sitting here together. You'll hear me actually make mistakes. And sometimes I do it on purpose just to see if you're paying attention. You'll hear me crack jokes. You'll hear me say, well, you probably are laughing at me right now because look what I just did. Things like that to get the student engaged. When it's digital, it's very difficult to get them engaged. So what we do, or what I've done, is I try to make it very adaptive. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that you have to, one, anticipate. Two, you've got to start where they're at. So you try to, at the beginning of whatever material you're at, is define what that's going to be. What's the perfect persona, that person that's going to fit this? And then build it in from there. Make sure that you're constantly coming back and saying, Okay, do you understand? I bet you don't. Let me back up and explain the why and take you again, and then have a feedback loop that allows them to come and ask you, okay, this isn't working for me the way you say. What's wrong? And I'll have them send me their code and we'll talk through it together one-on-one. Sometimes we'll jump on the phone. Sometimes I'll reshoot a video just for them to explain.
Okay, so by leveraging technology, you sort of can have your sort of pre-recorded general information and then bring down that one-to-one connection on that level when you need to.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you can use technology to your advantage, right? So everyone's learning out there in the digital space, and we'll talk about that later, of what advantages that is. So as educators and as engineers, we can step back and go, okay, how can I leverage this platform to better serve the students and the people that are going to come to us?
I find that like actually one of the most challenging parts of doing online teaching is when you have a course that you're doing in person, you can do your best to kind of explain what you're going to be teaching, but you really don't know who you're going to get, but you kind of have a lesson plan. But in my experience, as far as what we've been recording, pre-recording, we're spending a lot more time targeting who we think this course is for before we even hit record that first time. Like before we even create like a table of contents or like what we're going to actually be talking about, we really nail down, all right, who is this for? What kind of questions are going to be asking? If they're going to be asking difficult questions, maybe this is too difficult of a topic, we should scale back and break, some section up into maybe another video. So I find I spend a lot more time kind of getting an online course ready versus an in-person course. I'm just like, here's what I'm going to be teaching. And if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. I mean, I always try to do the one-on-one thing and say, hey, ask me questions afterwards. I'm always open to Twitter and people ask me questions there. But for the most part, online, it's kind of like I have a lesson plan. You're going to take what you can from it. Online, I'm really, really trying hard to cater towards a specific person because I'm recording it. And it's going to be online for a month, 2 months at least. People are going to come, to it and see it way after the date that I actually record it. So I really you have to spend, or at least I do, I spend a lot more time, again, just getting ready for recording.
Man, that's such a crazy good point. So teaching in person, like we've been saying, the feedback loop, you can tell immediately when somebody doesn't get it, right? Like they're giving you this cockeyed look and you're like, all right, I need to rephrase. You don't get that with online, but you also, you do get to choose your audience, I think, a little better with an online course, right? You can be very descriptive. You can give sample lessons. I taught a graduate course at the University of Scranton for essentially databases for MBA students. And there are prerequisites, and most of them kind of got written out of the prereqs. So they come to class, and I'm like, all right, I assume you guys know some programming language, right? Like ASP or PHP. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, well, you guys at least know HTML and CSS, right? And they're looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, man, my lessons completely depend on at least some of that being true. So I do a crash course. And I mean, now that I have videos, I guess I could just send them the videos for homework or something. But like the first few times, it was like deer in the headlights. And the next time I taught the course, I assumed, well, they probably don't know HTML and CSS. They almost definitely don't know PHP. So I'm going to do 3 classes of PHP, and then we're going to really deep dive into the database. But you with an in-person class, you sometimes don't get to choose your audience, especially at a degree track university or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about this, I think, in episode 1 of our education series, where when you're doing it in person, especially like, let's say a WordCamp talk, where it's kind of educational, you can ask those questions beforehand at the very beginning of your talk. And you can say, okay, let me adjust my talk real quick to, get more people involved in my talk and get them learning. But again, with a recorded course, you don't have that option. So you have to make sure your what you record is going to attract and keep those people kind of involved in learning.
Yeah, but one of the things you get too from the digital space that you don't necessarily get up front is a do-over, right? So you can fine tune it and fine tune it and fine tune it. Just like Joe was saying, he did that in the in-person. So one semester, okay, well, they didn't get it. The next semester, I fine tuned it. Well, we get a much quicker response that if somebody doesn't get something, okay, I need to build a prereq to this. Go take this. Or maybe I can adjust the intro and make it a little bit longer. If you need those tool sets, great, then we're going to take you down that path. So it does give us a little bit faster way of being able to get our points across and be able to help people.
And with today's metadata, we can actually, I think, have really good analytics as to where people are dropping off in a sense, or what lesson is specifically hard. And I do believe there are some ways that let us even send out like automated emails in the case that a learner is sort of, we can see them sort of falling between the cracks and not making it. We can reach out before they've lost the passion to keep learning.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's something that I use LearnDash for on my courses. So, with an online course, you need to build the community some other way, right? So, if I know that people are dropping off after the 8th lesson in one of my courses, I can set up an automated email in LearnDash to say, hey, you just finished maybe the hardest lesson in this course. Do you have any questions for me? What's going on? What can I clarify? You can also go over to the forum. People are asking questions there, and you can kind of interact with your fellow students. So you let them know that they're not alone. They've got you as the instructor. They've got other people who are taking the course, and hopefully that kind of helps them get over the hump to the next lesson.
Yeah, mine's just a little bit different than that. Mine's a membership. Okay, so you come in and then you can binge watch whatever you want to watch, right? So I went after Jeffrey's way of doing it, like at Laracast or Railscast, and I went down that approach of you can come in and pick, okay, I want to be a plugin developer. Well, here's a roadmap for you, but then you can pick and choose the things that you want to do. Well, what that does then for me is I built in little spots within different sections of the labs to be able to say, boom, right here, answer this question for me. And then I challenge them, and most of the members will actually write me and say, this is what I think the answer is. And then we can have an exchange about that, because what I find is, even back in my days when I would sit with some of the more senior engineers even, they are looking at you thinking that they got it, and then you probe deeper and, well, nope, they're over here, and they need to be over here. So asking very pointed questions to be able to get that engagement helps us. And that metadata really does help a lot.
As a student, that was every math class for me. It's like, oh, I totally get this. And then I go home and do the homework, and I'm like, I don't get this at all. This is crazy.
You're bringing back bad memories of math class for everyone, Joe. Oh, the formulas, they're just everywhere.
I must be the exception. I'm the math geek. I don't know.
Oh no, we could geek out all day about physics too, but that's for another series on another podcast, probably even. Let's take a second and just compare and contrast, because there are some, we've talked about some advantages with online education, but one of them that I'd like to talk about is the wide availability. And this is great. We're in a great age nowadays where you don't have to learn CSS from one book. You don't have to learn CSS from one video online. You can learn it from about 10 different teachers, each with their own sort of philosophy on code.
Yeah, so we were talking about this before. So I'm really old, right? So back when I started in the mid-1980s, there wasn't an internet, right? So we had to actually get on planes and go to conferences, or we had to pick up the phone and talk to people, or we read books. And let me tell you, learning engineering, learning programming, learning how to think about code, it's not going to come from a book. That's not the best way to learn. So that was one experience, being surrounded by senior people, making sure that you had people around you to learn from. But that's a very small population of people you get exposed to. You don't get to read as much code, which you really learn a lot from reading other people's code, seeing what works, right? Trying different things. That exposure that we used to get, it was very, very small in our exposure and what we could do. Well, then we break out into the digital world, and let me tell you, there's a major advantage to being able to go out and say, I want to learn this, this, and this, and I'm going to do the same things from multiple different teachers. Because what can happen is all of us could teach the exact same thing, right? Let's go and do a JavaScript course, or maybe I'll teach something in C, or, gosh, I even go all the way back to assembler. So all these different things, we can go and teach all of these. I could take them from 10 different people. And what's going to happen is, just like if you're sitting in the room with 10 different engineers, you're going to learn something different from each and every one of them. So what you try to do is get an assortment. I always advise people, don't just listen to just me. Go and listen to Roy, listen to Joe, listen to Zach. Go take other courses. You're going to pick up much more, which is going to help you to adapt it and grow more.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said with development specifically, because as kind of developers know, you can have one problem or one thing that you need to build, and every developer can find their own way to build it. And not all of them are like, it doesn't mean all of them are wrong. It just means they're different approaches. So sometimes you might just find a developer's approach to how they tackle things more along the lines of how you might tackle something. Therefore, you're going to learn a little bit more from them because you understand kind of where they're coming from a little bit more. I do love the fact that with online learning, you can pick kind of all these teachers. And with a lot of the teachers online nowadays, you could even catch even like little bits of them on YouTube for free, right? And then maybe, from that, maybe then go invest in their courses. Or most of the times, it's still cheaper to invest in an online course than it is paying tuition at a university, right? So just making that investment to yourself and saying, okay, let me try out Tanya's course for a little bit. Let me try out Joe's course for a little bit. And just see which one, you're going to end up learning something. It's never going to be no value at all, but you might just find, you just learn faster with one teacher or the other. Again, that's all just a relationship that you end up having.
I'll put a little small plug for the conference accumulator known as WordPress.tv, because that's a resource that straddles online and offline education, but it's still very valuable both for educators and for learners at finding people whose code style resonates with you, and then seeking out their ebooks, their courses, and learning more about their way of thinking about design and coding.
Yeah, and to that point, I said this a lot in the pre-show, but the ability to iterate kind of makes you 6 months ago and you today maybe two different teachers. So when I taught my Intro to Computer course at the University of Scranton, the first semester very different from the third or fourth or fifth semester, because I knew what worked, I knew what didn't. If you go to WordPress.tv and you look at my developing a responsive theme talk, I gave basically the same talk for an entire year, and you can see it change from WordCamp Lancaster in March to WordCamp Baltimore in October, right? You see the talk evolve based on questions I get, based on new things I was trying. So it's very valuable for an online student who can buy your course once. For me, they get lifetime access. And if I change a lesson, they'll get an email about it, and then they can rewatch and see if they can glean anything new, right? That's not something that as a university student you might get, right? You're not going to take my course again unless you really like me or you have a bunch of time that you want to audit the course again. So
Yeah, one of the things I would like, I try to tell people all the time is you need to learn from a lot of different sources, right? So my career has been built over lots of different people with different skill sets. Just because you may resonate with one person and like their coding style, don't get locked into just that, right? We're trying to learn how to think about solving problems, how to think about adapting code, because I'm going to tell you what, you're going to come into situations where you have to solve a problem that, unless you've built up enough skills of being able to know what resources to tap in and how to think about the problem, how to go and dissect to be able to find what the root cause of that problem is, you're not going to know how to solve that problem effectively. So you get that from lots of exposure, lots of different views, and then you blend those together to adapt it to how you want to work, right? So you don't want to just emulate Well, Tanya says, do it like this. Don't just emulate, adapt it for yourself.
I like that point about getting deep into the functionality, the true core of why we do a program or why we create something. Not just knowing the right lines to enter to get a result, but truly understanding the fundamental reasoning behind the solution to the problem.
Right. That's when you unlock the ability to build anything in code, which is really what you're trying to get to, right? Is, okay, code is one thing. I can code in C, I can code in any other language. It doesn't matter. That's just the vehicle to get me there. Instead, it's how do you solve the problem, right? How are you effective at building it as quickly as you can build it to be able to add value for that client?
Yep. Once you know how to drive, you can drive whatever car, right?
Oh, I thought you said jive, not drive, so I started dancing. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, we're gonna hand jive a little bit later, I think, right?
I like that you brought up WordPress.tv too, because WordPress.tv is primarily recordings of people talking at conferences, which brings up a point where online, a really big pro with online is that you're not always in a classroom setting. There are recordings out there online of classroom-like experiences. Front-end Masters is a great example of that, where you're kind of watching a teacher teach an actual classroom with their slides and everything, or if they're doing coding. But then lynda.com, for example, you are just screen sharing and working on almost a project most of the time with lynda.com. Like the way I set mine up are always, hey, here's what we're gonna be building today, and then step by step, how do we get there? How do we go from the base of where we start to the final product? And there's a whole bunch of other types of kind of teaching methods that are online right now. And that's another great thing, that if you're going to go to a classroom, you're only going to get a classroom experience, right? You're only going to get a classroom. But that might not work for you. You might not be the person who did well in school, and that might just be because you don't like classrooms. But watching someone code, or watching even someone debug code, which I do quite a bit, might teach you more than watching someone explain, with slides or something like that. So that's another really big advantage of online.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like doing too, and I know you guys do as well, is I'll break the site. Let's break it. Okay, why? Let's walk through the thought process of what just happened and why did it happen. A lot of questions I get a lot of times is people will email me the PHP error that pops up on their screen, and I'll say, let's break it down. What is it telling you? Because the clues are there if you just read it. So yeah, those types of skills, being like you're saying, Roy, to be able to sit and watch someone debug and troubleshoot a problem teaches you a way of processing in an incremental, systematic approach.
Yeah, I'm very much a learn by doing guy, and that really translates into my teaching. It's and I think something that really resonated with me in college was one of my teachers, Dr. McCluskey, in like CS1 or CS2. Like we would get like a very classic computer science problem, right? Like the Dutch national flag problem, or how to determine if a string is a palindrome, right? Is it the same forwards and backwards? And each time he would approach it like he has never seen the problem before. And he could write the solution in his sleep, but he would talk through it, think out loud. We would give input, and that was very valuable to me. So I try to bring that to my teaching style. Even in the classroom, a student will ask a question, and I'll say, well, let's try it out. I'll open up CodePen or an editor, and I'll do something, and it won't work. And I'll be like, all right, let's figure out why this didn't work. Because at least for me, very seldom does code work on the first try for me. Like the first time I write more than like 5 lines, something is broken.
It's kind of a problem I've been having, and I'm relatively new to the online space, but not in real world or like in live in person. I hate feeding people answers, right? Like if they come to me the same thing, like I have an error. Okay, let's step through it. What does this lead you to? What does this lead you to, right? Like, because you have that interaction, you don't have to spoon feed them the ultimate answer. But with online, you're not, what are you gonna just sit there? Like, you don't know how much time to give them before they, you know. So it's been a shift for me personally, like being able to show someone the answer without just spoon feeding 100%, like no silver platter, like, hey, try to learn this on your own and try to challenge people actually watching my videos, but at the same time, not just giving them answers and showing them things. Because I feel like that's how you learn. You have to kind of get challenged.
Yeah, one of the things that I try to incorporate in is let's walk down different paths. All right, if we went down this path, what happens and why? Oh, no, that didn't get us there. If we walk down this one, what happens? So that really helps to be able to do that. But yeah, you got to put the time in up front to plan all that out, pre-record it, and so on. Yeah.
You know, I'll usually ask a question, tell them to pause the video. You know, this is the problem. Pause, come up with your own answer. When you unpause it, I will tell you what the answer is and why. Which is not the same, granted, but it does at least keep them engaged, so they're not just like watching you talk at them.
I am going to latch onto that point and pause this video discussion because we don't have enough time to keep talking about the rest of how we can keep talking about online teaching and all this. So thank you for joining us for today's podcast episode, for episode 2. We will be back very soon with a continuation of this series because, as you can see, we've only started scratching the surface of the power of online teaching. So thank you for joining us, and we shall see you in the next podcast.